Hey, what's going on everybody? Commander Crane here, and we are back with another Pioneer video. And today, we're going to be talking about 10 red-white budget decks that are perfect for the Pioneer format. So before we hop into the actual video here, I love to mention who this video is for. So this video is perfect for people obviously looking to get into the Pioneer format. Maybe they're looking for some inspiration, or you're looking for some budget decks to maybe play or expand your Pioneer collection. This is also a great video for people that are looking to get into Magic in general, and again, maybe you're looking for inspiration, or you're just looking to build some decks with some themes. Maybe you really want to build a Boros deck. Regardless, this is going to be the perfect video for you. But before we also hop into the decks, I have to mention that we've done a whole bunch of the dual color decks. We just finished all of the green ones, so now we are going to be moving through the red ones next, and Boros is definitely one of my favorite color combinations. So I'm really excited to talk about these decks today. And again, the last thing before we hop into it here, the featured decks, they all have to fit this criteria. They have to be Boros. So obviously, every single spell in the deck needs to be able to be cast by a red-white dual land, less than $50, because after all, it is a budget deck, you know, where you draw the line for your own budget deck, that's up to one owns interpretation. But I figured with a $50 price tag, you could build quite a few decks with that. A flavorful theme, obviously that's very important. We do have like kind of some decks that are not like necessarily like super flavorful, but they're at least strong and play some unique cards for the Pioneer format, as well as being easy for new players. That's not to say that experienced players won't enjoy these decks. It's just that, you know, there's a few cards that I made substitutes for because I didn't want to have like Word Soup or Day Night, for instance. We'll kind of get to that once we get there. But yeah, easy for new players, but still fun for people that are experienced. So let's go and hop into the decks here. Okay, so the first one, everyone kind of knew this was going to be on here. Boros Burn. Everyone loves Burn, or I guess that's not necessarily true, but a lot of people really like playing Burn. And one of the biggest reasons to play Boros is because of Boros Charm and Lightning Helix. Boros Charm being the biggest one because you can deal 4 damage for only 2 mana, which is pretty awesome. But then still most of the deck is red, and you get some really nice white sideboard cards as well. But the core is still the exact same. You play your cheap prowess creatures in Kumano, and then you just follow it up with just a whole bunch of burn spells. Burst Lightning, Play with Fire, Lightning Helix, Skullcrack, Skewer the Critics, and Light Up the Stage. It's just kind of your generic, you know, go fast red aggro deck. And yeah, a lot of people love playing Boros Burn, and I don't really blame them. So the next deck that we have to talk about today is one of the more popular Boros decks that you'll see in the format. That is Boros Convoke. So the idea is to play Gleeful Demolition. You destroy an artifact, and then if you control that artifact, you get to make 3 1/1 Red Goblin Phyrexian creature tokens. So what you do is you play Three-Bit Inspector, Novice Inspector, and Voldaren Epicure, putting in an artifact into play, and then using Gleeful Demolition to make 3 tokens, and then we get to play a whole bunch of spells that take advantage of, you know, making a bunch of cheap creatures like Knight Errant of Eos and Venerated Loxodon. We get to dig for a creature, or we get to put counters on all of them. We have Ward of the Inner Sky, which can get just absolutely massive. We have Resolute Reinforcements to just, you know, it's 2 bodies in 1. And then Imodane's Recruiter, we can give our creatures +1/+0 in haste, and pretty much end the game just because we go really, really wide with that. So yeah, Boros Convoke, again, one of the most common Boros decks you'll see in the metagame, and for good reason. So if you like playing tokens, but you maybe want to go a different, you know, slightly different style of tokens, I think you really might like this version, Boros Tremors. So what we're trying to do is we're playing Impact Tremors as well as Shocking Sharpshooter that read whenever a creature you control enters, it deals 1 damage to each opponent, or in this case with Shocking Sharpshooter, it is target opponent. And we're playing a whole bunch of cards that love it when we play more tokens. So obviously we have Stadium Headliner, Word of the Inner Sky, mostly just to take advantage of these potential tokens, but we have Honored Knight Captain and Resolute Reinforcements that make a whole bunch of tokens. Anim Pakal, which can make a crazy amount of tokens as long as it gets bigger. Then we can also play cards like Frontline Rush, Hop to It, and Hordeling Outburst, which make a whole bunch of extra tokens as well. So that's what we're trying to do. Go really, really wide and take advantage of Impact Tremors and Shocking Sharpshooter. Worth mentioning, I did want to include War Leader's Helix, or not War Leader's Helix, War Leader's Call in this deck, but unfortunately I was not able to fit them in the $50 budget. So they would have been in this deck had it been more than $50. Do keep that in mind. If you have them laying around, definitely put them in this deck, though. I really do think that card is perfect for a deck like this. So the next one I have to go over is kind of a deck that I used to play when I first started like playing FNM and such in Modern, but obviously this is not Modern, it's Pioneer, but it is Boros Control, which is a pretty straightforward deck for the most part. You play a bunch of early removal like March of Otherworldly Light, Torch the Tower, Fateful Absence, things like that, and then you play a bunch of, good board wipes like Day of Judgment and Sunfall. You play a few Planeswalkers like Elspeth Sun's Champion and Chandra Torch of Defiance to kind of help end the game, It's really just kind of a straightforward deck. I am playing 4 copies of Rip Apart right now just because I think it is really good in this metagame. Obviously, you're able to take out some cheap creatures, but it's also very good because there's a lot of good artifacts and enchantments running around, most notably cards like Unholy Annex, as well as Corey Steelcutter. So I think it's very important that you play at least a little bit of like main board artifact or enchantment hate. And Rip Apart, you're able to kind of do 2-in-1 with that, which is really, really good. But yeah, just Boros Control. It's one of the decks that's not necessarily like super flavorful, but if you love playing control decks, I think you're really going to love playing this one. So the next one I have to talk about is definitely one of my favorite decks for Boros and Pioneer, and that is Pia Exile. I really love this. Okay, so here's the idea behind this deck. I've seen a few different variants of it, but this is the variant that I always thought was the coolest. So, okay, you have Pia Nalar, Console of Revival. Thopters you control of haste. Whenever you play a land from exile or cast a spell from exile, you make a 1/1 Thopter. So you play cards like Reckless Impulse, Ren's Resolve, and the new Opera Love Song, where it exiles cards, and then you can play those until the end of your next turn, or in this case with Opera Love Song, until your next end step. So when you play all these cards from exile, we get to make some Thopters. So what we're trying to do is have Pia in play with Showdown of the Scalds. So the first chapter there exiles the top 4 cards, and then until the end of your next turn, you may play those. And then chapter 2 and 3 says, whenever you cast a spell this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control. So with Runaway Steamkin, if we just keep exiling more cards and then using the mana from Runaway Steamkin, which says, you know, whenever you cast a red spell, if it has fewer than 3 counters, you put 1 counter on it, and then remove 3 counters, you get 3 red mana. So what we're trying to do with this is just kind of chain and chain and chain and chain a whole bunch of spells together, and just kind of play our entire deck, so to speak. And then we get to play Monastery Swiftspear and Soulscar Mage with all these different prowess creatures. So we get to, you know, they get really big and big and big and big, and then they get even bigger with Showdown of the Scalds. We make a whole bunch of Thopters that can also get bigger. So it's kind of like a weird Storm combo deck in a way, but we're also just playing a really cool, like, aggressive red-based deck. It's very fun. I really do love Boros Pia. You don't really see it much anymore. It was very popular about 1.5 years ago, but again, we just don't see it very often, and the deck is really, really cool, and that's why I wanted to share it today. So the next one I have is one of the more interesting decks here. I love to feature this in usually like Azorius, not so much Boros, but I still think it's very good in this color combination, and that is God-Pharaoh's Gift. There's a lot of different ways that you can build the deck, but the core is still the same. You play Tune Up and Refurbish, which says 4 mana, return an artifact from your graveyard to the battlefield. So we're trying to bring God-Pharaoh's Gift into play, which then lets us bring back creatures from our graveyard. It kind of, it's like Eternalize, where it becomes a 4/4. That's what we're trying to do with this card. So with Boros, one thing that's kind of cool is we get a few really good discard outlets. Most notably, Lightning Axe, which is a great removal spell, Cathartic Pyre, which is a good removal spell that also can potentially let us loot, which is great, and then Thrilling Discovery, which is a not very well-known loot spell. So you gain 2 life, then you may discard 2 cards, and then draw 3. So it's kind of like a Cathartic Reunion. It does have to resolve before you make the discard, but it's just a really great way to gain some extra life against aggro decks, but still also, you know, discarding 2 and drawing 3. We get to put our artifacts into the graveyard. So the cards that we're trying to reanimate. So we're playing Bonecrusher Giant and Skyclave Apparition just because they're very good cards that we don't mind reanimating. But just in case we don't have God-Pharaoh's Gift in the graveyard and we still want to return an artifact to play, we're playing cards like Steel Seraph, Combustible Gearhulk, and Threefold Thunderhulk. Threefold Thunderhulk was actually suggested to me by when I did the most recent Azorius God-Pharaoh's Gift deck. I really wish I would have remembered who recommended this, but it's really, really strong because it comes back as a 4/4 and then enters with 3 counters. And then it says whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, you make a 1/1 equal to its power. So we just get to make 7 1/1s when it enters. Oh, and it gains haste. So then we get to make 7 more, which is just absolutely crazy with God-Pharaoh's Gift. So yeah, Red-White God-Pharaoh's Gift, a very, very fun deck to share here today. And again, it's a little bit different, and I think that's what's cool about Pioneer, being able to share some different cards that you normally don't see. So the last deck that I have to talk about that really actively sees play in the format is... it's one that a lot of people thought was going to be on here. It's Red-White Heroic. So what we're doing is we're playing a ton of creatures that love being targeted by spells. Most notably, Favorite Hoplite. Whenever you cast a spell that targets it, put a +1/+1 counter on it and prevent all damage that will be dealt to it this turn. We're playing a bunch of creatures that love it when we cast spells like this. Obviously, Monastery Swiftspear, Emberheart Challenger, Illuminator Virtuoso, and 10th District Legionnaire. there's a bunch of different cards that you could realistically play in this deck. I chose to play Ancestral Anger, Homestead Courage, the new Honor that's in Edge of Eternities, Monstrous Rage, as well as Shard Mage's Rescue. I've seen a lot of people play like cards like God's Willing. I've seen some people play Titan Strength in this deck. There's a lot of different things you could do. It's very customizable, but I feel like these were the best cards that I wanted to feature. Some of the ones that I thought about playing, I did end up putting in the sideboard, kind of like Reckless Rage and some God's Willings, but this is a really fun deck to play. A lot of people love playing the heroic style decks, and I don't blame them. These decks are really cool, and they can go really, really fast, which is also pretty sweet. So yeah, Boros Heroic, one of the better decks in the metagame, and obviously made it to the finals of a Pro Tour really not that long ago. It was actually in the last Pioneer Pro Tour. So very, very cool to feature Boros Heroic. So the last three decks are kind of like, well, they're kind of tribal decks for the most part, which I always like to save these till the end. So the first one is one that everyone thought was going to be on here, is Mice. So this is more of like what I call traditional Mice. It's very similar to Heroic, where we're playing a bunch of cards that target our specific creatures and get value. So cards like Shard Mage's Rescue, Homestead Courage, Might of the Meek, Monstrous Rage, Titan Strength, and Reroute Systems. But I decided to make this more of a traditional mouse deck. Not so much like Heartfire Hero and going all in on the cheap mice. Like, we're kind of doing that, but we're also playing cards like Mabel, Heir to Cragflame, as well as Flowerfoot Swordmaster, which is kind of what I like to call like wizards, like mice as wizards intended for the most part. Obviously, you know, we're still playing the really quick combo of Heartfire Hero with Manifold Mouse, which is still a thing you can do in this format. But again, we're not, I mean, like, obviously we want to kill people as quick as we can, but we're also playing some other cool mice in this deck. It's not just like mono red that happens to be mice. We still get to play the actual mouse package here. So very, very happy to feature this one. So the next one we have to talk about is kind of a creature, it's kind of a tribal deck. It's Boros Vehicles, which is kind of insane if you actually get the nut draw. So Colonnade is really the core of this deck. It's a 2/3 for 2, mounts in vehicles you control of haste, and whenever a vehicle you control enters, it becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. Well, we're playing Consulate Dreadnought, which is a 1-mana 7/11 vehicle with crew 6. But we're not actually trying to really crew this. We're trying to just play this as a 7/11 for 1 with haste. And we also get to play a card like Voyager Glidecar, which is very sweet. And we're playing Peace Walker Colossus, which also helps animate our vehicles. And that's what we're kind of trying to do. We're trying to basically cheat with our vehicles with Colonnade, but we also get to play some other great cards like Hotshot Mechanic, which really helps us crew any vehicle, which is fantastic. Monastery Swiftspear, we're playing a whole bunch of non-creatures. It makes sense to play this. Toolcraft Exemplar is pretty sweet. It can pick up a 3/2 First Striker and kind of help crew our other vehicles, which is great. We're also playing Ingenious Smith, which helps us dig for some artifacts. And since we're already playing some other artifact synergies, we're also playing the 4 copies of Portable Hull and 2 Perilous Snares as some removal. Yeah, Boros Vehicles, this deck was really fun to make. I made it when Aether Drift first came out, so I was very happy to feature a deck like this. We also get to play Mech Hanger, which is one of the few decks I shared today that has like their own spicy dual land or like, you know, synergy land that you can play. It really fits this deck very, very well. So yeah, huge fan of this Boros Vehicles deck. I think it's very fun, and I want to say that this was the cheapest deck here being featured today, just because it plays a handful of rares, but they're really just mostly like 50-cent dollar rares that not a lot of people are playing in other formats. And the last deck I have to feature today, I would say this one might be the strongest one. It's either this one or the Burn, but it is Boros Humans. So it's basically just your traditional mono white humans deck, but there's some really, really good red humans that you can splash. You know, with humans, you can realistically splash it with any color. Like, you can. And Boros Humans is also an example of that. You get to play a card like Kellen Planar Trailblazer, which is kind of like a pseudo. It's definitely not as good as Ragavan, but it still is like interesting and similar like Ragavan. You also can play Incy Sinistral of the Sun, which is such a good card. You get so much value from a card like this. And then in addition to the 4 Adeline, we get to play 2 Animpa Call, which when it gets bigger, we just get to make so many attacking gnomes, and it's going to end the game very, very quick. So huge fan of that. I'm also playing the 4 Banisher Priests in here. I'm not a huge fan of like the day-night cycle for new players specifically. So I did put in Banisher Priests instead of I'm already forgetting the name of the Brutal Cathar. If you have Brutal Cathars and, you know, you're an experienced player, feel free to go ahead and put those in. But when you're a new player trying to track day and night, it can just be really, really confusing. And then I also put in the 3 copies of Seam Rip, which is the new Portable Hull from Edge of Eternities. basically better just because it's harder to hit with more removal. You know, like red really doesn't have an answer for Seam Rip, so that's why I decided to put in the 3 copies of Seam Rip instead of the Portable Hole. But those are all 10 of the decks that I shared today. Definitely let me know what you think about all these decks in the comment section. Which one's your favorite? Which one of these maybe you've already built before, you're thinking about building because of this video? Definitely let me know what you think in the comment section. And that takes us to the end of the video here. Thanks so much for watching. The deck lists are in the description below if you'd like to check them out for yourself. Huge shout out to our channel members, Ralph, Matt, Arcadius, Ray, Gary, Sirwanoki, Michael D, our premium channel member, The Common Cold, Jeremy P, and BG Stilts. If you're interested in being a channel member, it starts at $1 US a month, and you gain access to the exclusive Commander Crane Discord, as well as other features here on the channel. So, I'm Commander Crane, thanks for watching this video, and hope to catch you in the next one.